Brock would not be Brock anymore. That is the first thing you have to accept before this thought experiment goes anywhere interesting. If you stripped every Kanto Gym Leader of their original roster and forced them to rebuild from scratch using only Hoenn Pokemon, the gyms would not just look different, they would feel different. The fights would be harder, the personalities would shift, and in more than one case, the leader would walk out of the rebuild stronger than they have ever been in any game. This is the case for what every Kanto Gym Leader's team would look like if Gen 3 was the only well they were allowed to drink from, and why some of them would finally become the threats the anime always told you they were. Start with Brock, because Brock is the easiest and also the most unfair. Brock's whole identity is rock. Slow, defensive, heavy. Hoenn handed him the best rock-type toolkit in the entire series, and nobody talks about it. Give Brock a Nosepass as his opener, because that is the closest thing to Onyx the region offers, and then hand him the Aaron line as his real muscle. Aaron, Laren, and Aggron. Steel and rock fused into a wall that hits back. Add a Relicanth as the wild card, because Relicanth is rock and water, which means every electric type the player was about to sweep him with now does neutral damage at best. Brock just went from a tutorial fight to a roadblock. Now imagine being a new player who picked Torchic, walking into Pewter, and meeting a fully evolved Aggron. The game ends there. Misty is where it gets fun. Misty's water identity always leaned cute and graceful, but Hoenn gives her teeth. The natural rebuild is Wilmer leading, because Wilmer reads as Misty's energy on the surface, bouncy and round, but evolves into Wailord, which is the largest Pokemon in the entire franchise. Stack Corphish behind it for the Bruiser slot, then Celio for the ice covers that the original Misty never had, and close with Love Disc as the throwaway gimmick the gym always gives you for free. The interesting choice is Carvanha. Misty in the games was sweet. Misty with a Carvanha is not. Rough skin, sharpness, a glass cannon that punishes you for touching it, that single addition flips the gym from a checkpoint into a real water fight. Lieutenant Surge is the one who suffers in this exercise, and that has to be said honestly. Hoenn's electric pool is thin. You get the Electrike line, you get Plusle and Minon, and that is essentially the menu. So Surge's rebuild is Manectric as the ace, Electrike as the throwaway, and then a Plusle and Minoon double act that actually works better in his gym than anywhere else in the game because their entire kit was designed around helping each other. Surge becomes a double specialist by accident. He is not stronger than before, he is weirder, which honestly fits him. Erika gets richer. Erika's whole vibe in the original was tea ceremony, sleep powder, slow poison. Hoenn lets her keep all of that and adds aggression. Lead with Roselia, because Roselia is exactly the kind of elegant, poisonous flower Erika would put in a vase. Add Shroomish and Breloom for the fighting coverage Erika never had, which is the single most important upgrade in this entire rebuild, because Breloom with Spore and Sky Uppercut is a problem for anyone who shows up with a normal type expecting an easy sweep. Round it out with Cacnea, Cacturn, and Atropius as the heavy. Erika walks out of this rebuild looking less like a florist and more like a botanist who knows which plants kill you. That is an upgrade. Sabrina is where the thought experiment gets philosophical. Sabrina is psychic, and Hoenn's psychic line is essentially one family carrying a region on its back. Ralts, Kirlia, Gardevoir, that is the spine. Then you stack Spoink and Grumpig for the bounce back, and you close with Lunatone and Solrock as the matched pair, Sun and Moon, which is exactly the kind of dual symbolism Sabrina would build a team around. Now here's the thing. Gardevoir in Gen 3 is not the Gardevoir people remember from later games. It is fragile, it is fast, and it hits with Psychic from a base 125 special attack. Sabrina with a Gardevoir is not a puzzle gym. Sabrina with a Gardevoir is the hardest fight in Saffron and possibly the hardest fight before the Elite Four. If you are still with me on this, do me a favor and hit the like button, because the back half of the gym circuit is where this gets genuinely interesting and I do not want the algorithm to bury it. Koga is the most natural fit of any leader in this rebuild. Hoenn loves poison. Koga's whole shtick was ninjas and toxic stalling, and Gen 3 hands him the perfect roster without even trying. Seviper as the ace, because Seviper is literally a snake assassin, and Koga would put it on a wall scroll. Gulpin and Swalot for the stall core, because Swalot's whole identity is sitting there absorbing damage while you slowly die to poison. Dustox for the powder game, and then the cruel pick, Cacturn. Cacturn is grass and dark, but it learns the entire poison toolkit, and it has Sandveil. Koga with a Cacturn in a sandstorm is the kind of fight that ends careers. The original Koga was a stepping stone. This Koga is a wall. Blaine is interesting because Hoenn's fire pool is small, but every single piece of it is good. Numel and Camerupt as the heavy artillery, fire and ground, which actually gives Blaine ground coverage he never had in the originals. Torkoal as the defensive anchor, which is exactly the kind of slow, smoldering fire type Blaine would run a quiz about. And then the ace, Combuskin evolving into Blaziken. Blaziken in Gen 3 hits like a freight train, gets Sky Uppercut for the fighting coverage, and outspeeds half the things that used to wall the original Blaine. The Volcano Gym goes from a type check to a real test. Blaine was always supposed to be intimidating. This is the version of him that actually is. And then Giovanni. Giovanni is the most loaded rebuild in this entire experiment, and the reason is simple. Hoenn's ground type pool is enormous and weirdly mean. Trapinch, Vibrava, Flygon as the centerpiece, which gives Giovanni a pseudo-legendary on his team, something the original Giovanni was never trusted with. Camerupt for the second heavy hitter. Baltoy and Claydol for the psychic and ground dual typing, which means Giovanni now has answers to fighting types, something his old team famously fell apart against. And then Whiscash as the closer, because Whiscash is ground and water, which means electric does nothing to it, grass takes time to come online, and Whiscash sits there eating hits while it sets up. The original Giovanni had a Rhydon. This Giovanni has a Flygon. That is not a rebuild, that is a promotion. Now step back and look at what this exercise actually reveals. 5 of the 8 Kanto leaders come out of this rebuild stronger than they were in the originals. Brock becomes a steel wall. Erika gets a fighting type for the first time in her life. Sabrina inherits the best psychic line the franchise ever produced. Koga gets a stall core that punishes patience. Giovanni gets a pseudo-legendary. The leaders who stayed roughly the same, Misty and Blaine, became weirder and meaner in ways the originals never tried. The only one who genuinely loses out is Surge, and even he gets a doubles gimmick that fits his personality better than his original team ever did. The bigger point is what this says about Hoenn itself. Gen 3 catches a lot of criticism for being water heavy, for having too many new evolution lines tied to old families, for leaning too hard on legendaries. But the moment you try to slot its Pokemon into roles built by an older region, you realize how deep the toolbox actually is. Every type has a credible ace. Most types have a credible second option. The dual typing options are richer than anything Kanto offered. Hoenn is not a weaker region. It is a region whose strength only becomes obvious when you make it do a job it was not built for. If Game Freak ever ran this experiment officially, even as a side mode, half the fandom would walk out of it with a new favorite gym leader, and the other half would never recover from running into a fully evolved Aggron in Pewter City. If there is a gym leader you think I built wrong, or a Hoenn Pokemon I should have given to somebody else, drop it in the comments and I will pin the best ones. And if you want more Pokemon what-ifs that actually take the math seriously, subscribe, because the Johto version of this rebuild is already on the board and it is even worse for the player.